Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and with 8.3 actually having a release date of January 14th now, and Ny'alotha opening literally 1 week after on January 21st, I wanted to take a bit of time today to talk about Warlocks in 8.3, both from a Mythic Plus perspective and a Ny'alotha perspective. Now, seeing as how I've tested the vast majority, actually pretty much every boss and every difficulty they've had available in raid testing, I think I have a pretty good pulse on what specs we're going to play on each fight, but more so what specs are going to be a bit more dominant this tier compared to maybe previous tiers, just in general. Now, I'm not going to talk about each spec we're going to play on every single boss this tier. That'll probably be a video I put out in a few weeks from now. I do want to talk more so about the two specs I feel we're going to be playing a bit more in Ny'alotha compared to one. Now, I do want to say that I will be releasing a video in the next few weeks talking about each individual boss in Ny'alotha and what specs I think we're going to play on the fight. This is not going to be that video. I've received a lot of questions both on stream and just through Discord in general on how are we in Mythic Plus, how are we in rating, how does each spec look, what's changing. So I want to address a lot of those topics and questions in this video. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Now, taking a look at Ny'alotha, obviously, if you've watched my stream for most of the testing, I've played Demonology, but the two specs that I've played the most when it came to Mythic testing and more, I would say, serious testing, where I didn't think Demonology was the best in the fight, are Affliction and Destruction. We can address the elephant in the room of, hey, there are no Rolling Havoc traits currently in the raid as far as Azerite goes. Seeing as how we're less than a month away from the patch dropping, and essentially a month away from the raid dropping, it opens in a month and 1 day from now, in my opinion, I feel like, even though I don't want loot tables to be done as far as Azerite goes and just bosses in general in the raid, I would be pretty surprised if we see the actual Azerite traits changing on gear or more loot being added to these tables. Now, there are still two bosses in the raid, both Dressigath and Vexiona, that have literally one item on their entire loot table for us at all, but we're a month away from the raid opening. The patch drops in 3 weeks. So at this point, I do, as much as I don't want to say it, I feel like loot tables are mostly done. Now, as far as Destro goes in Ny'alotha, this is a big destruction raid. Probably the biggest Destro raid we've seen the entire expansion. Even disregarding the fact that we don't have any Rolling Havoc pieces on actual gear in Ny'alotha, the Dungeon Residium vendor still has a good bit of Rolling Havoc Azerite on him. Half the helms that we have available, 3 out of 6, have a Rolling Havoc X trait combination on them. We have 7 pairs of shoulders and chest this time around due to the Mechagon shoulders and Mechagon chest being added to the dungeon vendor. But still, 3 pairs of shoulders and 3 different chest pieces actually have Rolling Havoc on them. Looking at the actual shoulders from the actual dungeon vendor, 2 out of 3 shoulders have the combination of Flashpoint, Rolling Havoc on them, and the third pair has Crashing Chaos and Rolling Havoc on them, which are really strong with one another. You typically want, if it's a big Flashpoint Rolling Havoc fight, 1 Crashing Chaos trait for your 2-minute Infernal build, and then 2 to 3 Flashpoint traits and 2 to 3 Rolling Havoc traits. The chest piece has the potential of 1 Crashing Chaos Rolling Havoc chest, or 1 Flashpoint Rolling Havoc chest too, and I believe the other one is like Rolling Havoc Chaotic Inferno or something. The one helm that is worthwhile is Grasping Crown of the Deep, which has still eluded me. Getting ready for 8.3 Initial Prog, which is Crashing Chaos Rolling Havoc, and the other 2 are like Bursting Flare Rolling Havoc and something else. The important thing to take away, though, however, is even without having Rolling Havoc traits on your gear in general for Initial Prog, if you don't, there's none in the raid, obviously, if you don't get any from the Residium vendor, this is still a really strong destruction raid in general. A lot of bosses have ads spawning really well timing-wise that line up with every Rolling Havoc window, and or Cataclysm CD. Skitra, Hivemind, Raden, and a handful of other bosses which elude me at this point, even though I've tested them 5 or 6 times. This is a really strong Destro raid. A lot of 2-target cleave bosses, council-based bosses that have a lot of cleave, a lot of opportunities to proc Flashpoint and get really strong Rolling Havoc value. Even without Rolling Havoc value, Heart of Darkness is a really strong Azerite trait for us, and regardless of it, like I said, having Rolling Havoc traits or not, there are a lot of fights you're probably just going to play Destro on due to how strong it is. You know, Skitra ads need to be burst down pretty quickly. The same with Raden. As far as like single target Destro goes, Affliction's been really strong at single target damage. Demonology is strong in a sense at single target damage, even though it's insanely RNG based. The Lucid Dreams destruction build, I'm actually really curious to test with more. hopefully we get our hands on some corrupted gearbender at some point in PTR before it goes down to be able to test with the bonus crit damage corrupted gear. That's what I'm really looking to test. Hopefully we get one soon enough, because I'm really curious to see if the single target Lucid Dreams Destruction build ends up pulling ahead of Affliction single target and or even potentially Demonology single target with higher levels of corrupted crit bonus gear. That's still to be determined, but TLDR, Destro looks really good this raid with or without Rolling Havoc traits. As far as Affliction goes, I've tested a lot of the fights, the more single target based fights like Raytheon, Shadhar, Dark Inquisitor, a handful of other fights too that are more single target based. Even someone like the Cleave-esque fights like Raden as Affliction. I've been really impressed with it. I have a triple Racking Brilliance, triple Cascading Calamity, triple Overwhelming Power set. So obviously, hey, it's pretty strong. But Destro single target, sorry, Affliction single target still looks really good this raid. There are fights similar to Unat in the sense where you can generate resources from surrounding ads like ID-esque, running ID traits and then pumping that damage into the boss with ID traits, things of the sort. But I've been really impressed with it. We also had the Nightfall Drain Soul changes about 2.5 months or so ago. I've tested a lot with them over the course of PTR, and from my testing and the sims I've seen and run on my own, everything mostly seen, Drain Soul is going to be the talent that we want to play with the vast majority of the time in 8.3, disregarding shard sniping and everything else, just for actual raw damage. There are a decent bit of fights in Ny'alotha, Mount, Hive Mind, Raden, Carapace, and N'Zoth that you actually can get a lot of value as far as shard sniping goes, but doubling the actual damage on Drain Soul, the execute damage is a bit relevant, and pairing it with an Azerite trait like Breath of the Dying with Haunt UA damage modifiers as well, you have a pretty good bit of execute damage playing Drain Soul as an Aflock as well. I did make a case early on for Nightfall being an option on fights with heavy movement or frequent planned movement, like Shadhar, round effects, things like that, potentially even like Dark Inquisitor. But honestly, the thing with Nightfall is it's still RNG based, and you don't really want to hold a Nightfall proc for planned movement coming in 5 or so seconds. There's no ICD or anything like that on Nightfall. I've literally had Shadow Bolts proc back to back, where if I held the proc for 3 seconds for movement, I would have lost the proc. Also taking into account that Drain Soul has partial periodic ticks over the course of the drain, 4 or 5-ish depending on haste levels, you're really not losing a whole lot playing Drain Soul, even on fights with heavy movement or a decent bit of movement. And if you get shard sniping on them, you're in an even better spot. As far as Demonology goes, I do think there are a handful of fights we're going to play Demonology on, or at least have the potential to play Demonology on. I'm not going to totally go super in-depth on that now. Like I said, I'll be releasing a video probably in 2-ish weeks before the raid drops, talking about each spec that I want to play on every boss. But I can say Mount, as far as like that goes, phase 2, where you're trying to hold damage back due to the spell reflect. Soul Link, the damage being split between your pets, everything else, you really don't have to hold back. Raid testing, everybody else is holding back. I'm just full on casting my tyrants and blasting, taking no damage. To some extent, Vexiona is a fight where I think we can get a decent bit of Demonology value, both with like VOP major, minor builds for killing the larger ads, and at the same time also dealing with the final portion of the fight, because phase 3 from 40 to 0 is a single target burn phase. So all that insane flashpoint rolling havoc value that you're going to get playing Destruction is gone. Very, very similar to how Mythic Ashara is now, when people are playing these flashpoint rolling havoc builds and they have 5 dead traits in the final phase. The interesting thing with Demonology and the Azerite we have available to us in Ny'alotha, I'm 99% sure we don't have any EP Baleful chests in the raid. However, we do have EP Demonic Meteor combinations on chest. The interesting thing, though, is that we have Explosive Potential Baleful Invocation Shoulders and Explosive Potential Baleful Invocation Helms in the raid. So the combination of triple EP, triple Baleful technically is a thing. You have to get your EP of Baleful chests from the vendor, but I believe there are 3 chests in the vendor at this point. It's a thing. Now, I haven't gotten the chance to run sims on stream and as of this point yet, but I'm really curious to see where this build goes. I hope there's a less RNG build of Demonology that doesn't really run VOP major anymore and runs like triple EP, triple Baleful, or there obviously is the debate discussion of if you want a Demonic Meteor trait mixed in there. Demonic Meteor single target grants a lot of extra value. More shards, more refunds for larger tyrants, larger consumption, just more Hand of Gul'dan cast overall, more imps, more damage. But the question is, if you're running a VOP Miner trait there, are you actually going to want... I mean, because like if you're running VOP Miner, our neck is scaling to 80. We're leveling it to 80. So there's a further minor passive reduction on your Tyrant cooldown. It's basically going to be around a minute. I think it was like a minute and 8 seconds, a minute and 4 when we ran the math on it. It's pretty short. So in a sense, Baleful Invocation gains even more value there. And I mean, 2 and 3 stacks of EP and 3 stacks of Baleful are extremely strong on their own. So I haven't run Sims really looking at what's better there, if you want that 1 meteor trait or not. I'd sort of be surprised if you don't want the 1 meteor trait, because it is pretty powerful. And I'm also talking like a single target-esque scenario here. I certainly want the 1 meteor trait for Mythic Plus. But I'm curious to see what ends up being the best there, whether it's triple EP, double Baleful, 1 meteor, or like triple Baleful, double EP, 1 meteor. The jury's still out there. But I hope and would like to see a more consistent Demonology build come out. Maybe running Condensed Life Force Major or whatever Major ends up being worthwhile now that CLF has been nerfed a few times. I haven't run Sims, I haven't even seen Sims on like major essences at this point. And once again, I do want to emphasize that, hey, even though the raid does come out in a month, tweaking and tuning can and still will happen on PTR. There's probably going to be 2-ish more builds we get before the patch goes live. And we probably will have a bit more raid testing before the patch even goes live. So, but all 3 specs, I think we are going to play all 3 specs actually in Ny'alotha. I just feel that Destruction and Affliction are once again the front runners. At this point, barring some tuning coming to Demonology or just changes in general. Now, as far as Mythic Plus goes, Warlocks and Mythic Plus go on 8.3, there's not really a whole lot that's changing from 8.2, 8.2.5 to 8.3. As far as Affliction goes, we do have the Drain Soul and Nightfall changes. Honestly, I think Affliction is the spec that gains the most from 8.3. It is also like the worst spec in Mythic Plus out of the 3 that we have available to us at this point. One of the most frustrating things about Affliction in Mythic Plus, outside of like its glacially slow ramp-up time, having to apply all your dots in the trash dying before you actually deal any damage, is playing with Shadow Bolt in Mythic Plus. There have been so many times where I've been in the middle of casting my Shadow Bolt, or it's been traveling to the actual mob, and it dies. With Drain Soul being a thing now, that's no longer going to be an issue. Shard sniping is a relevant thing in Mythic Plus. Now, is it going to actually push Affliction to being the best spec we have in Mythic Plus? No, it's not. It still suffers from glacially slow ramp-up time. Seed of Corruption is not really where we want it to be at this point. Just in general, it really suffers CD-wise, having our Dark Lair be a 3-minute CD compared to Destruction having a 2-minute Infernal, and Demonology having a 1-minute Dark Lair. Or, sorry, Tyrant. So, like, as far as these specs go in Mythic Plus, it's, in my opinion, and the opinion of most everybody else, going to be about the same as it has been the past few patches. Demonology is still going to be the best spec in Mythic Plus. We're still lacking Interrupt, obviously. I don't think we're going to get anything like that until Shadowlands, if we even do at that point. I don't think it's very hard to give Demonology an Interrupt. Just give us the called Fell Hunter talent from PvE or PvP talents, whatever it is. But it is what it is. Having a 1-minute CD essentially in your Tyrant, whether you're playing VOP Major or Minor, is very powerful. On larger, higher keys, on Fortified Weeks, you essentially have a lot of single target priority burst on priority mobs. It's a very, very strong spec for Mythic Plus in general. Unfortunately, we lack both an Interrupt and a reliable form of CC. While there are certain mobs we can actually banish, and banish is a very strong form of CC, there are not many. And Fear is not really a reliable form of CC. Now, you know, obviously, I'd love to have Glyph of Fear back where it just feared your target in place, but that's wishful thinking. So, I still feel Demonology is overall going to be our best choice as far as Mythic Plus goes moving forward in 8.3. Destruction did gain a decent bit of value in 8.2 with VOP Major and things coming along. Keep in mind as well that in 8.3, VOP Major actually has been buffed by 12%. So now I want to emphasize it has not gone from a 1% proc rate or less to a 13% proc rate. It's gone from like 0.85 to 0.95 or so. I think that was mixed up by a lot of people initially when it was talked about. But still, a buff is a buff. But hey, once again, RNG is RNG. Destruction is really CD oriented, whether you're playing VOP Major in Plus or Lucid Dreams in Plus. I personally prefer VOP Major. I played with Destro a decent bit in Plus, and it's very powerful if your tank pulls around your CDs in general. I've struggled a decent bit, and it's not just me. I know other Warlocks in the community in general have talked about it. When you pop your Lucid Dream CD going into a pack, dropping a Cataclysm on 4 or 5 mobs, you end up shard capping a little bit with your Infernal, even with weaving in multiple Rain of Fires under, you know, the effect of Lucid Dreams. So I prefer playing VOP Major as far as Destro goes in keys, but if your tank pulls around your CDs, every 2 minutes or so you have an insanely strong, insanely massive burst window. So if you're playing Flashpoint, rolling Havoc traits on a fortified week or in a dungeon where you can get a lot of value out of them, your damage is insane and can rival, if not beat, Demonology in keys. You also have, obviously, an Interrupt, which even though it's bound to your Fell Hunter, and we're still lacking in the form of CC. So, and then we have Affliction, like I talked about a bit. We also have an Interrupt, you know, same thing, our Fell Hunter with Affliction. But unfortunately, the Drain Soul Nightfall changes. While it's going to be nice to have Drain Soul Mythic Plus, we're still going to suffer from having pretty slow ramp-up time, and just our main CD being a 3-minute cooldown in Dark Lair. Now, there are some builds running VOP Minor and or Dreadful Calling to get your Dark Lair to around a 2-minute CD to line up better with your font, if you're playing it, and or DSM, other CD windows, things like that. I played with it a bit on stream and off stream. I'm not a huge fan of the build. It's sort of just hard to get behind playing AF and keys in general, seeing as how you have to work so much harder in a sense for your damage. Even though I enjoy it, you can just go in and play Destruction or Demonology and do more damage with half the amount of work. So as far as 8.3 goes, I still think it's going to be Demonology, Destruction, and then Affliction down here on the first floor of my apartment complex. But hey, none of the specs are bad enough where you can't play them in keys. So there's that. Overall, though, as far as rating goes in 8.3, I do really feel that Warlocks are probably one of, if not the best caster heading into Ny'alotha. And that's not talking Mythic Plus, we're talking the raid, Ny'alotha. Destruction, Affliction, and even Demonology on certain fights provide a lot of utility while bringing a lot of damage, whether it's, you know, just blasting ads or priority mobs or just the boss in general. I'm excited to see what specs truly end up being the best on certain fights. I always really enjoy putting out the, hey, these are the specs I think I'm going to play on this fight video and see what ends up being the best. Like I said, I do truly feel that we're going to end up playing all 3 specs across progression in Ny'alotha. But I think Affliction and Destruction are going to be the 2 front runners. So we'll see. But I appreciate you guys watching. Sorry it was a little bit of a longer rant and or just, you know, chat video than normal. If you guys aren't following me on Twitch, feel free to do so. I'll put a link like somewhere up here-ish or somewhere to my Twitch, Patreon, and or other relevant links. I also placed in the description a link to a spreadsheet that was made by a viewer of mine, I believe in 8.0, that highlights every single Azerite trait combination from 8.0, 8.1, 8.2, 8.2.5, and 8.3, both in raid, outside of raid, dungeons, Mythic Plus, World Quest gear, everything. It's insanely helpful if you want to like find a specific trait combination really quickly on either a helm, pair of shoulders, or chest piece. But yeah, boys, thanks so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, feel free to smash the follow button. It helps out a lot. And I will see you all again on stream. Let me know what you guys think of the... gosh, this chair. Let me know what you guys think of the Azerite trait combinations and just how Warlock is looking in 8.3 in the comment section below. And I'll be sure to get back to you guys if you have any questions. So feel free to drop them there as well. So thanks again, dudes, and I will see you all on stream soon. Have a good one, boys. Peace.